Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from October 21st?
So moved.
All right, Michael Parker moves. Do we have a second? Yeah, Chad Thatcher gets a second. Any further discussion or notes on the minutes? All those in favor of approval of the minutes?
Raise your hand, Paul.
Any opposed to approving the minutes? Mark said so.
Oh, sorry.
Any abstention? Is anyone missing? Jesse? Thank you. The minutes passed. Would like to welcome a very distinguished guest we have with us today, Chair Len Hinian of our Board of Trustees. She asked to come visit with us and
Well, thank you. Very distinguished, I really like that. You all are the ones that make this university happen. And on behalf of the board, I just want to say thank you, and thank you for your patience in what you've had to go through most recently in trying to vice chair, I know it's always been great back here. How we might try to save a little money without damaging any of the programs. That's really, really important, and we'll do our best. And you'll hear from Greg later, so I won't spoil him if it's really, I hope it is. Anyway, I am just here to say thank you, to see how we can bring a little certainty to the theme this year of uncertainty. Because it certainly is an uncertain time, and with the changes going on. I would like you to know that at the last board meeting, there was a standing ovation for our president, Dr. Schott, in the fact that her first 3 years here have been, I think, absolutely remarkable in bringing some stability to the organization. I was going to say a little more certainty, but with the theme in our minds now, but we are very pleased with the way that she has led us out of kind of a tumultuous and difficult time financially to where we are now. And we were very pleased last June to give her another 3-year contract, so we're stuck with her. We get to have her for 3 years. Actually, I tried to get her to sign a 5-year contract, and she wasn't quite ready to do this. So I'm counting on you all to help keep her even after the 3 years is up, because those 3 years will go very fast. So, as I said, my role here is just to say thank you, and it's also to encourage you to come to the board meetings. You are very welcome to come and sit in. Several of you I have seen, if not met, at those meetings, and others I have seen and heard and very impressed. So that's it, unless anybody has any questions for me. Oh, come on, don't get money off that easy. Okay, well, we'll be back again soon, I hope someday. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Next up, we have the president's report.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Hinian. I didn't ask her to say those things. Appreciate it, though.
You did tell her.
We are trying to find out, a couple of years ago, we had a social between the board and the members of the Senate, and we're trying to figure out if we could do that again. We'd like to do that, so it's just kind of a matter of timing and stuff. So just a few things from me. First of all, I want to thank those of you who took part in the Seamless and Future Ready Education Conference last week. For those of you who weren't there, we had about 100 people on the first day from K through 12 education, from employers, from SOU, and from some of our SOHEC partners. Really, really good conversation about what the future might bring and how we can empower all learners in an uncertain future. And we also, then about the second day, we had about 60 people, I think. And again, more good conversations. So I've been on the run since then. I rolled right from that to full schedule of homecoming activities, and then to the annual Association of American State Colleges and Universities meeting down in Phoenix, where we were given the National Award for Sustainability and Sustainable Development. Yeah, it was very exciting.
Awesome.
applauding for Vince Smith and Jill Smedstead and all the people on the Sustainability Council and all the students who have really pushed this university to do more and more in that area. I got to get the award, but at the State of the University address on November 14th, I'm going to pass that award on to those who really deserve it. And we're even bringing Roxanne Beagle-Coriel back by video to be there to kind of see the award. And so anyway, I've been rolling along since that conference, and Jean Stallman's been out, but when she gets back in the next few days, we're going to issue some follow-up stuff, and we'll be working on how we move forward now with the exciting work, especially with our external partners. There'll be internal conversations, I'm sure. I also wanted to let you know that we continue to work with our legislators. It's sort of a year-round process. So on Wednesday, we're having our local delegation, so from Grants Pass down this way to my house. And Sue and Greg and Neil and I are all going to be there to basically just kind of bring them into the family, help them understand what's driving enrollment changes, how that impacts our budget, how their funding flows through us, just really kind of give them an insider's look at things so that they can be even better advocates for us. And then the following week are legislative days when the legislators are in their offices at the Capitol, and I believe I'll be going up and meeting with some of them then. Again, I'm waiting for Jean to schedule those for me, but that work keeps on rolling. And finally, we will be starting our meetings where I and the vice presidents will come out and meet with all of the academic divisions. I think most of those have been scheduled. We've had to reschedule a couple. We may have to reschedule another one. But we really want for all of us to be there when we come to talk with you. What it's going to look like is that I'm going to open it with some sort of national context around what's happening to higher ed, what's happening to colleges and universities, what's happening with costs, debt, enrollment, those kinds of things. And then we'll talk about how that's impacting us locally in terms of enrollment, how we're responding. Neil and Sue are going to talk about how we're going to responding to these challenges. And then Greg's going to talk about what the budget looks like, some of what you're going to see today. He'll go through in those divisional meetings so that folks who haven't seen it get a chance to look at it. And then Janet Fratella from the Development Office will talk about how the foundation is trying to help. So it's a roadshow that we're bringing out to all the divisions in the just transparency, deepening knowledge, share in the spirit of shared governance. Let's get more people understanding what is going on so that we can get more help in solving all of these issues. So as I said last time, please encourage your colleagues to come to this. We've done a lot of open forums. Not that many faculty often come. So I really want to engage our faculty. We need our faculty aware and helping us think about these things. So that's it for me, unless anybody has any questions.
Any questions?
Did you see that article in the New York Times? I mean, you must have. But is someone
Probably
going to?
which one?
The one about the state of higher ed and
The one
had all
that
the stuff
David
about
circulated.
Willamette and
Yeah.
yeah. I was wondering if anyone was going to make a comment on where we stand with all of that, or.
Well, I'd have to look back. I mean, there are so many articles, Paul,
Yeah.
and just so many that I read on a daily basis of what's happening in different places. So I'd have to look back at that one. But that's some of what I'll do in the divisional meeting is
I
sort
guess
of
that's
set
what I
a
was
bigger.
asking, if the school was going to sort of say, here's what we're thinking, was sobering.
Yeah, that's what keeps me awake.
What was
at
the
night.
gist of this article?
Well, people struggling to stay in business, I think.
Well, and making mergers like Willamette with, was it Pacific School of Origin?
They're acquiring, mergers and acquisitions are all the rage in higher ed now. And so they've acquired a theological seminary as a try to get scale for their operations and stay in business. So one of the slides that I think I'm going to show at the divisional meetings is just a page of all the colleges that have either closed or merged since 2016. And it's a partial list. It's not to scare anybody, it's to increase awareness of what is happening. And that's what we're working so hard to counter and be one of the winners in this crazy reorganization of higher ed.
Right.
You can also stress the non-traditional student, going after the, the.
Corporate.
There's just the person that's not in that 18 to 22-year-old bracket that.
Yep.
And I thought, when I read that, I thought, wow, we're doing those, we're already doing a lot of that stuff, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I go to these conferences, like even at the one I was just at, I always feel pretty good on the one hand because we're doing pretty much everything. I'll pick up a few little nuggets here and there and I'll come back and go, Sue, Neil, are we doing this? Let's try it, let's think about that. On the other hand, there aren't any real big low-hanging pieces of fruit for us to grab onto because we're already thinking about adult learners. We're thinking about changing demographics. One big takeaway at this last conference I was at was what more can we do as an institution of higher ed to lead on the issue of climate change. And really, we've been good at sustainability, but when I was talking to one of the speakers, he said, oh, that's such a kind of an old construction, sustainability. It should really now be about how are you going, what can you do to help us reverse climate change, right? So I want to start us thinking about that and how we can do even more. I think we have many noble purposes, but two really big things. And one is getting better around diversity and the changing nature of our citizenry and who we need to be educating, and two, climate change. For all the other reasons we exist, and we know there are innumerable ones, these are ones that we can really lead on, and I think we have a responsibility to do so. And I'll shut up now.
Just quickly, about a year and a half ago, I think I mentioned that the Oregon Council of Presidents, or OCOP, had asked the Provost Council to develop a improved or updated process for program approvals for new programs, either new undergraduate majors or new master's programs. And so we worked for about a year on that, and last May, the OCOP group approved what we came up with, and I'll tell you why it matters to you in just a second. It's going to the HEC this Thursday for endorsement, so we can start using it for this round of program approvals, and that's why I'm bringing it to you today. The process and flow chart will be up on the Provost website after it goes through the meeting on Thursday. But the reason I wanted to mention it today is because there's a new piece in there. There's a sort of a heads up step that wasn't in the previous process. So sometimes it would get all the way through Faculty Senate before I might know that there was a program coming forward, unless Jody happened to mention it to me or I was made aware of that. So now there's a early, we're calling it not a heads up, but an early signal that there's a program, new major coming. It goes out to all the provosts, and they have 15 days to either reach out, raise concerns, or otherwise comment on the proposal. That's just a 2-page document, and then if no one hears from another provost, we can assume that it can go forward to the full document, which are, as you know, 30 pages long in some cases. So this is just a heads up step, but it'll affect you a little bit in terms of your timing of things. So if you could share that with your faculty, that would be great. Any questions on that?
I do. So is this just to the other Oregon Public University provosts?
Yes.
Not all the community college presidents, not all the privates?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Is it just for degree programs, or will this affect minors and certificates
So
as well?
certificates just go to the provost council as an FYI, there's no vote, so it's not an action item. So it's anything that requires a vote, yeah. So it would be a new major, new grad program.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Is that your only end?
That's it, because I know the agenda is full.
It is. Thank you. Kim?
Well, I want to say I'm delighted with my new time, 4:20. Anyhow, we did talk a little bit at advisory council about two things I wanted to report to you all about. One is an issue that's come up some at the Senate, some at advisory council, and a lot at elections committee, but it ultimately is a bylaws question about how we decide what programs, i.e. secondary academic divisions, have chairs. And so we've added this around. It's too complicated to summarize all of our discussion, but I'll just say that what we came up with was we decided as an advisory council that we'll pull some recommendations together, share them with you all, and then share them with the Constitution Committee. Because right now we have new programs, new things arising, what things deserve a chair and therefore need to go through the bylaws process, what decisions does the provost just need to tell us. We all agreed that these were things we needed to talk about and clear up in the bylaws. So that was one major item. The other one, in the spirit of President Shaw was not able to be with us, so we got a homework assignment for her. We continue to, yeah, you love this, right? We were continued the discussion that we had at Senate about administrative evaluations, some of the problems there, and we decided that the best place maybe to go with this, hopefully, is for the president to put together a task force to look at it and make some recommendations. We obviously would like some faculty and perhaps Senate presence on that, but anyway, that's what we were hoping to do on that issue that you brought us last Senate meeting. And really everything else is reflected on being on the agenda today.
Any questions for Kim? All right. Brittany?
So hopefully none of this is repeated. It seems like 2 weeks is not that long, but it also felt like a month ago. So we, as I probably brought to you last Faculty Senate, approved to redo our student fee bylaws. And just so an update in case you're a bylaw person and want to read them in your free time, they are officially up on our website, all edited and good to go. Also, the HEC task force that's just like evaluating the funding model in the state of Oregon, I am on. The next meeting is going to be Friday, November 22nd, and I will be driving to Salem that day, and I'm looking at Greg because hopefully I can get a ride.
That's him saying yes.
Also, just an update, so now those student bylaws are done. We are now meeting to hopefully this term in the timeline. We're supposed to have the fee officially set by the end of the term, and so that we can present that to the Board of Trustees so they know the fee. And then the next 2 terms, obviously, we're allocating it using the projections on how we're going to do that. So just an update that our first meeting should be in this next week. Also, this Saturday and Sunday is the Oregon Students of Color Conference in Eugene, and we have 30 students going to that conference. It is a statewide conference, but also we typically have people from Northern California, Washington. Last year, a bunch of Canadians came. It was really fun. It's a good conference. So yeah, some students are going there. And finally, our all ASSU issues were voted on the Tuesday after your last Faculty Senate. And the issues that we chose to work on this year are the first one, which goes with the National Sustainability Award, is we have a ad hoc that's going to be created to evaluate paper usage on campus. That also will probably be going to faculty to talk about maybe limiting the use of printed paperwork that students have to do in the classrooms, or in general posters around like the SU or around housing, limiting that number of paper usage. The next one is about international students and just kind of getting a feel for international students of different issues they may face on campus that we don't necessarily always observe in student government and always hear those voices. So we really want to talk to those students, find out what difficulties they're facing both on campus as well as off campus, like the struggle to find housing when you do not have a California landlord or anyone in state. It's really hard for those students to live anywhere other than on campus. So we just want to kind of talk to those students and figure out how we can help the student government. And then the final ASSU issue is about tuition and state funding, and basically it's just an ad hoc that will all year be putting on events and conversations about not only tuition but also like fees around campus. If people don't understand where their health and wellness center fee goes or where the rec center fee goes, these will be conversations so people can start to understand that, as well as my own little plug of the funding model to educate people on the funding model and the importance of it. My fun little idea is to do like a Plinko game, and then the Plinko never falls to SOU because of the funding model. That's just me, it's like a shade, but you'll be able to look out for that. That's all.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions for Brittany? Greg, do you have this covered that you're going to do it right?
Between Jason and I, we got it covered.
All right, we have Matt Stillman and guests.
And Alon.
This will not be as fun as Plinko, I apologize.
No way you did the license of it?
Sure, thank you. Want to take a tour? Thank you.
And this has been added to your drive. It was late coming, but you can access it in the drive.
So thank you, thanks Andrew, I appreciate the time, thank you Alana. We normally would have come to Faculty Senate with sort of academic calendar related type of things because frankly most years it's relatively rinse and repeat, and I just publish it and announce it to campus and it's a thing. But Alana and I are proposing a couple of what I would consider to be relatively substantive changes this cycle. So we wanted to fully vet this and frankly get faculty perspective and perception on this particular topic. Because as you'll see, there's a couple things in here that are possibly substantive changes to how we normally do academic. So we'll run through this. We should have a few minutes at the end for questions, but feel free to pause us as we go and we'd be happy to entertain soon. Just a quick bit of background. I've been building out academic calendars in 1-year intervals for a few years now, really intentionally because there's so many things changing institutionally that we kind of decided a few years ago not to get too far ahead of ourselves. Take, for example, our work with academic partnerships for online MBA and online MSCD. That if I were locked into a 5-year calendar, we would have had to unravel that and rebuild everything, et cetera. So we've tried to be as nimble as possible. So recognizing that, what this suggests is a 2-year approach that will get us through the next 2 academic years. It's of course always possible, and I would consider nothing set in stone even once this is adopted. If we don't like how things go the first year, we can always scrap and rebuild and move to something entirely different for the second year of that interval. In other words, it's nothing set in stone. I have had multiple conversations with RCC because they are interested as we are in trying to be on as similar of an academic calendar as we can possibly be. Needless to say, with the high volume of transfer students, dual enrollment students, et cetera, we have with RCC, it behooves both institutions to be as lockstep as possible with academic calendar. And they are interested as much as we are in exploring this particular option. But the 2 primary things we're going to walk through today are Veterans Day and sort of a different way of thinking about winter break and spring break intervals and planning and how those things sort of come together. Alana, you want to talk through that stuff?
Sure. So some fun facts about Veterans Day. About a year and a half ago, as I was starting to compile all of these data points for Veterans Day and the observance of it, I noticed that of course SOU does not, at least as of this juncture, but it is a federally observed holiday. It's also a state recognized day. There is a law back in 2013, Senate Bill 1, that went out that said, hey employers, we know we can't require you to pay the day, but we strongly encourage you to allow veterans who have been honorably discharged from service to be able to take the day off if they request it. So that's a law that's in place. Naturally, we have veterans preference in our hiring practices. So if we have a veteran who has disclosed their military paperwork during the applicant process and they meet the minimum requirements of our job, they are guaranteed consideration. So again, whether they're a disabled veteran or a veteran, we still provide that preferential treatment. Naturally, we're all familiar with SOU's Veterans Resource Center. We also have 4 of the 7 Oregon public universities currently observing Veterans Day as a paid, recognized holiday. I did reach out to my peers. They all thought it was going well. The perceptions across campus were all well received when they implemented at their different intervals. I have on here the second to the last bullet, classified, observe Christmas Eve in lieu of. So right now, the way our classified collective bargaining agreement is, as an institution, if we don't observe Veterans Day, classified employees, that's the only population on campus that observe Christmas Eve as that recognized holiday. No harm, no foul, except if you're a heavily staffed classified unit, you have to close operations for that day. So again, if we're looking at more of a campus-wide recognition for the idea of the veterans, the services that provide, and a day of recognition, where I wanted to propose now in hopes for future planning that the university looks at this as a closed paid holiday for all employee groups. Any questions on Veterans Day as it relates to the academic calendar? Just one day, each November 11th. Yep, Kendall.
Yeah, so I just want to try to grok all this. We already have, thinking as an academic year, we already take Thursday and Friday off. This proposal would have the 3rd day in the winter, which would be November 11, wherever it lands. But we would still have a 10-week calendar, or do we extend winter to 11 weeks?
Same calendar.
So basically, we have 3/4 or 3/5, if you want to count that way, of a week off. Okay, I just wanted to understand it. Thank you.
Jody and I have carefully looked at the state rules as well as accreditation rules on instructional days, et cetera. And I'm not saying that it's not an issue otherwise, but and we are completely solving it with all this approach, just to that lens. In other words, we're not going to run into any governance issues. But I do recognize that as a shift in instructional days.
Is that what the other universities do? They have 3 days?
Actually, I think one of those 4 may even have the Wednesday of Thanksgiving as a closure day as well. Winter term is a tough one.
Fall term. Fall term.
Yeah.
That too.
Different quarter.
Other questions on Veterans Day?
Is it normally observed on Monday?
It depends on however the 11th falls.
So we could have Tuesday, Thursday classes that lose 2 classes.
So, thinking about winter through Rick, and now bear in mind, we're going to show you just a mock calendar of what a couple of these terms will look like once we're done with this, because I know it's hard to kind of keep this all framed together. So as folks like us who've been here for a long time will remember, we've varied between 3 and 4 weeks off for winter break over the years, depending on when January 1st falls, depending on just the direction of the wind that particular year, and a variety of other sort of calendar planning items. I look back as far as I had records, and it's been all over the place forever. We have always, and I will say always, other than I think 1 year where we had 2 weeks of spring break because it was a weird year.
It was
furloughed, right? That's the only exception year I can ever find where we were not just a 1 week spring break. Obviously, the overall calendar in terms of where January 1st falls in a given year has a tremendous impact on how we do term planning. So I will say, what we're going to show you will work real cleanly for the next couple of years, and then we're going to have to think carefully about, what we do in that 3rd year just because of when January 1st falls. So what we're proposing is we settle in for a couple of years to a new pattern where we set on 3 weeks known of winter break closure and 2 weeks instead of 1 week in spring break. It's not because Matt wants to do this, although frankly I am personally in favor of this. when I've asked folks, including several of you in this room over the last couple of years, what do you want done differently for academic calendar planning? The number one thing I get asked for is, oh my God, can we possibly think about 2 weeks of spring break instead of 1 week of spring break? 1 week of spring break is not enough time. I get done teaching and I'm grading and then I have no time, and students sort of feel the same way. It's just 1 week is not enough for a break between terms. I will say from an administrative and retention and enrollment standpoint, I would completely agree with that sentiment. 1 week of spring break was fine for our students that have no issues whatsoever, that are fully registered for the upcoming term, that have no financial aid barriers, that have nothing in front of them they need to take care of, which of course is not all of our students, needless to say. So if a student has any imaginable issue, that transition time of what really amounts to 3 days or so of actual break for them, where we can actually get anything taken care of them, it's just simply not enough transition time. So I will leave it at that with a hard plug for, it's the most common request I get for academic calendar planning, is to think about how we can possibly bridge a 2-week.
Other than change the semesters.
Well, that, yes, no, you're quite correct. You're
So as you're thinking about spring break in particular, I would encourage you to think about the academic calendar for our public schools. Not just for our department head where we're involved, but because of childcare for our adult students, our adult learners who really rely on those things lining up.
One of the most difficult things with the quarter/term structure that we have, and I have not figured out a way around this at all, is our alignment with the public school system is awful. This will really not get us any further away or closer, frankly, to being in alignment. There's also the
If spring break lines up, that's really nice for families.
Yeah, it should line up with part of it at least. I mean, depending on what the school district does in that given year. Sherry?
Grades then would be due by midnight Tuesday?
Yes. Instead of me bugging everybody for grades being due Monday by midnight, they would be due as a normal term would be on that Tuesday, which I'm sure nobody will have any vehement objection to. Trust me, I hate bugging you for grades on a day early. I know how burdensome that is. The only burden we have. Actually, that's okay. I do like burden. But not about grades. Other questions about 2-week spring break?
2 weeks of spring skiing, that sounds really good to me.
Well, it's actually a break, which I think is part of what's missing. So, other questions or concerns before we move and just show you real quick the kind of how this lines up? I think it will help visually. Campbell?
Well, I guess I'll save it. Let's go ahead and show us the resident class.
What's preventing us from going to the semester?
Oh, dear.
I knew it.
I'm just
Agenda
asking.
is two-packed, Brian.
Hey, I'm just asking. I mean, if we
If
can,
nothing else, it's financial.
it's cheaper to do quarters, or?
When we're
No, the
already
cost of
doing
the
it.
change.
Oh, when we're already doing that, gotcha.
Did everybody see that okay? Okay,
But we
so,
have looked at it extensively, I will say that.
Can you make it bigger?
Yeah, can you
Yeah.
go on?
Don't worry if you can't, but.
no. Not too big? So this is just and you all have access to this. This is just a basic outlay of term start and end dates, and kind of how breaks. And I won't take up an inordinate amount of time, but we have mocked up what each of those individual terms look like as well in a mock, term by term calendar. You can sort of see how things. Questions?
Can you scroll down to, I'm looking at when spring ends.
Well, I've already tacitly said the one. My biggest concern with this is having 3 days off in winter relative to only 1 day in each.
In fall.
I mean,
Sorry, fall, I misspoke. 3 days off in fall instead of 1 in winter. As opposed, that really makes it difficult, I think, for classes that offer sections of the same content in fall another quarter, so I'm concerned about that. And so I guess one thought I was having on that, just throwing it out there, is we could add a week at the beginning of fall, start a week earlier, take Wednesday off before Thanksgiving as well, and literally have 4. Anyway, there would be ways to get a more full term in. I realize there are problems with that, so that's one thought. But my bigger, other concern is, I think minor actually. I mean, technically, the union's contract for faculty ends on the 15th. But I can assure you there'd be many of us who would be willing to get us around that problem. And we could probably just slide the 9 months,
So
17 to 16 or
I'll
whatever.
defer to Alana on the second question, but to answer your first question, I know that sounds like a simple solution. Here's what I run into though. With online MBA in particular, we need to preserve a full 14 weeks and then an additional week for summer. Because they run 2 back-by-back 7-week parts of term. So I have to build from that as a first starting point, and we're already using every day of that interval. So I can play with it, Kimball, and I'm not suggesting online MBA should drive the ship for the entire institution, but that is a new complexity from the last couple of years that I wouldn't have had to deal with before. We have to have enough time to teach 2 full summer sessions.
Oh, so this week that I'm imagining would bump into the end of the summer.
Yeah, which means the way around it would be, if this adds additional complexities, would be to start online MBA and start online MSAD like a week or 2 into fall term instead of the beginning of our fall term, which is not ideal, but is possibly doable.
Okay. I'm just spitballing.
No, I
Brittany had her hand up.
Yeah, I'm just looking at OSU's schedule, just because I have a friend that goes there, and they observe Veterans Day, but they also start the week before we do on Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday or Wednesday.
Yeah, is that anything we've looked at of just starting 2 days before?
No, that is possible as well, but I'll throw the same complexity that I shared with Kimball into that. Anything's possible. We do anything. Yeah.
So, when will this be real? I mean, but, so for me, I've been scheduled out for next year for months. And from my perspective, we really, knowing in advance would really be hugely beneficial.
And that's part of why I'm suggesting moving to a 2-year interval as well. The crunch of constantly having to come up, I agree.
Yeah. So when would...
It's a good question. I mean, my anticipation is after this conversation, talking to Brittany and bringing it to ASSOU and then cabinet. I mean, there's no campus calendar committee, so I think I've changed the substantive. Unless Sue and Linda disagree with me, should be ultimately a cabinet to sign off. But
because we've already scheduled concerts for what we thought would be the last week of school, and now they'll need to all get bumped a week. Should we start holding the next week?
I'm
How,
not sure
when
how
are
to
you going
advise
to
that.
ASSOU now?
I'm sorry, what was that?
When do you go to ASSOU?
I haven't talked to Brittany yet.
So,
I've
as soon as they can do that, it can come to cabinet at any time. So I would imagine we could have a final decision certainly by the beginning of December, maybe sooner.
Sure,
I just wanted to make sure we're paying attention to Kimball's concern. There are Tuesday, Thursday classes that will end up with 9 weeks in falls where November 11th falls on a Tuesday or a Thursday. I don't know how big an issue that is for those of you that run 2-hour, 2-day-a-week lecture patterns. But you are looking at potentially losing a full week.
We have 1 day a week.
November 11th is a Wednesday in 2020.
Yeah.
So it's not a problem the first time.
And it is a Thursday on November 2021.
And then it would hit.
No, I'm not disagreeing. It's a question.
Did you hear the
Well, and I can't have all my Tuesday, Thursdays moved to Monday, Wednesday those years. We can't schedule out rooms.
Any other questions?
As I'm sure you can imagine, trying to account for every imaginable need, want, desire, necessity in building this out with all the permutations is close to impossible. So, I agree with the concerns.
Matt, if faculty, if the senators take this back to their programs, should people send thoughts to you?
Please, that'd be awesome.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Thanks.
All right, Karen, you're
Friday,
next.
2022.
I've also added to the drive some material that Karen's going to be sharing here.
Oh, I just tallied up some colleague evaluations. I was going through and seeing what chair evaluations were needed. I send that information out to the chairs so they can keep evaluations up for our probationary faculty. Probationary faculty meaning those that are haven't tenure or a 3-year clinical contract. And this year I was tallying up the colleague evaluations, trying to remind people of who needed colleague evaluations. I sent that out to the chairs, the directors, and I also included your chair here. And Andrew reached out to me and asked if I would just present the information. I said I'm happy to present the tallies. I tried, when we reorg, there was a real outcry from several of the chairs that they had a hard time keeping track of who was supposed to be up for colleague evaluation. We implemented Activity Insight, and that is a repository for a lot of this information, and it allows me to help keep track of this in an effort to help chairs keep track of when evaluations are needed. So I don't enforce this or anything, but I do try to tally it and keep track of it. And so what I found is that there are, it looks like about 39 of our faculty members that are overdue for a colleague evaluation. I will say that one was recently posted. It was completed last spring, it just hadn't been posted. So I'm hopeful that there are others out that just haven't been posted in Activity Insight. There were 2 people, I will mention, that their colleague evaluation was due last year, but they were on sabbatical, so of course it couldn't be done. So there are valid reasons why some of those haven't had one done. But I said in my email that I was alarmed that there were that many people. We have another 35 that are supposed to have colleague evaluations completed this year, and then you can see by year on down. Here we have 41 that I put in the not applicable. These are likely people that are going to retire out before theirs is overdue or really close. If it was overdue by 1 year, I thought, no, I'm not going to do that, so I might as well just throw them in that bucket. Also, our year-longs that don't receive college evaluations are in that bucket. So questions about that, or maybe I'll show you all the data, then you can ask your questions. How's that? Of the 39 that are overdue, and again, that's slightly less than that, at least slightly less. 32 of them are tenured, either tenured or on a 3-year extendable contract. Okay, so typically it's not people that are going up through promotion, of course, because they have to have a most recent one. There are 5 people in there that are relinquished. They're relinquishing, and probably either just relinquished this past September, or they will in January. And then there are 2 on a 1-year fixed renewable contract, but a director pointed out that the bylaws here indicate that those faculty actually don't get a colleague evaluation because they're on the chair evaluation cycle. And these are people that have chosen not to promote. So they're supposed to get a chair evaluation every year. And there have been questions before about, is this, division specific? Is there one division in which we're having a acute problem? So I told Andrew that I would tally it by division. And so division, and then how many are on schedule, how many faculty are on schedule, how many have overdue colleague evaluations with percentage, and then the total number of faculty in those divisions. So you can see that they're spread across everybody, but there's a few that are like 3 gold stars that are doing really well, but keeping people on track. And then maybe some other divisions that need a little bit more help. I will say that it has prompted a lot of conversation. I've gotten feedback about, oh, we're going to do 3 a term until they're all done. It's like, okay, maybe that's a little bit ambitious, overly ambitious. But people are talking about, the chatter is going on. But, it's this, why do we have 35 that are actually due this year? I mean, that's a huge percentage, just that are due. And I don't think it's a coincidence that 5 years ago, we implemented our new academic structure. And we had a huge push in AY 14-15 to catch everybody up. And now all those people are due again. But we still have this other group of people that we haven't caught up yet. So, happy to answer questions or.
Well, I had one question sent to me, and I wanted to make sense of this. So, did you say, was it the chair or is it the division director that was supposed to upload it into Activity Insight?
We leave that to the divisions. So there's some, like one director says, please give it to me because they want to see it, we'll upload it and things like that. But it's, we, in the provost office, our academic resource officer with me now, Stacy Shaver, if you haven't met her, from the payroll office, she's now in the provost office with us. We're happy to help people that are having problems. We'll get it uploaded, just tell us that it's been done.
I have at least one chair who said that they completed them all, but for some reason they went to the division director and they said the division director not uploaded.
Yeah, please don't let that be your chair's reason for not uploading. That's the easy part.
So,
I have a simple clarification, and that is on this line about the, right there,
At the top?
I think so. When you reference year-longs, does that mean 1-year non-renewable contracts, or what
Yes.
year-longs mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, 1-year non-renewable, okay, thank you. That's
Yeah, our adjunct instructors, adjunct assistant professors. Yeah.
and so I just, the overdue, that's not necessarily, we just don't have information if it just hasn't been uploaded to Activity Insights, correct?
Okay, some of them, yeah.
I mean, oh,
Correct. I don't know why I haven't seen them, but I do know some of them are, they're 7 years overdue. So I'm kind of thinking that, all, at least 39 of them weren't done in the spring and just not uploaded. There's a mix of, yeah.
So I'd answer that specifically for STEM. I have 2 that are overdue. They're 1 or 2 year overdue, and that is because I tell my programs that if they have more than 3 due in 1 year, they can talk with me and we will postpone. So the 2 that mine are overdue, 1 was postponed from last year, 1 was postponed from the year before. They're not eons overdue, but I find that within a program, it is taxing to get more than a colleague evaluation a term completed, and so I give them a little bit of slush. I just try to be reasonable with workload.
And I think that's what, everybody's looking for is a plan to get on a regular cycle of colleague evaluations.
Any other question? I asked Karen to bring this forward because it is a faculty bylaw that governs this. So the bylaws say that the chairs are supposed to submit annually to the division directors their plan and the schedule for these. And so I just wanted to make sure that this information is going back to programs, and if there needs to be additional language in there about the process for tracking these sort of extreme situations where a program is overtaxed, putting that down somewhere so that we know and it doesn't look like programs are doing their work.
And I think for some faculty to take ownership of their own colleague evaluation, the chairs sometimes are rotating every 3 years, if their bookkeeping isn't very good in the program, then they do lose track of all of this. But to have some ownership yourself of knowing when that colleague evaluation is due.
And also not to stall it out.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's faculty who just don't get around to putting their materials together for their committee, and that's really hard on the committee.
All right. Our next agenda item is the one we're all excited about. Greg Perkinson is here to tell us about our approved budget.
All right, good afternoon. All right, so we've got 20 minutes allotted on the schedule. My intent is to spend most of that time on the last 4 charts that really talk to the...
Just so you know, I had to cut 5 of those out.
So we have 15 minutes. My intent is to spend most of that time
If we
on
have
the
to
last
go
4 charts.
over, hold on.
Since I think the charts were posted, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the front end. I want to set the context and then get into more of the detail related to how we're approaching the budget reductions. So that's my intent. So here's the roadmap. Stop the shift. So this is what we really spent a lot of time last year working internally and externally, is the messaging related to, and I think you even heard Brittany talk about it earlier, is how do we make sure that our legislators understand that they have in fact shifted the burden from the state to the student. So this line represents tuition, and roughly 2/3 of our revenue is coming from tuition. So this was our messaging last year, and that just built out the percentages on the back end. So a lot of numbers, I just want to hit the highlights. This is the pro forma that we presented to the board in June, and it was based on a couple of key assumptions. One of those would be that we would receive an additional $100 million in the Public University Support Fund over the previous year. So if you like numbers, that number was 737 million. So we were successful in getting an extra 837. I'm sorry, getting a total, that would be nice. Getting a total 837 million. So the way that hits in terms of dollars is we projected we would get 21 million of that. We projected we would be down 0.5 in enrollment.
I want to be clear, Greg.
Yes.
We didn't project we'd get 21 million of the 100,
Correct.
okay?
Based on
We
that.
get just a little bit of that, but it's
Right.
our total allocation from the state is 21 million.
Is 0.5, is that in, that's full-time enrollment, or is that head count?
So that would be really a measure of all the areas that we track for enrollment when you average them together. So we're really down about 3.6%.
Those credit hours, right,
But-
this and this?
Yeah, it ultimately ties to student credit hours that then tie to dollars.
So the reason I asked is, so the report from Christiane today was that FTE is down to 4.1. Is that compared to the 0.5 here, or is that not the right comparison?
Ultimately, it's SCH, it's student credit hours, it's SCH that we're really tracking.
So Andrew, the total number of credit hours is divided by 15 to come up with the FTE number. So they're directly linked. So if there's a 4.5% decline in FTE, it's also that in credit hours, right?
With graduate programs being the exception where it's 12 instead of 15.
Yeah.
The student credit hour totals at the bottom of page 1.
But this was just our projection as of June. What we thought we were operating with based upon a model that we've developed for looking at enrollment, looking at past enrollment and all that stuff.
So, and the other key point I wanted to hit, and I want to just set the stage looking at the June numbers so we can move to what the board approved in October. So really, this is stage setting. And as part of stage setting, we were looking at a $2 million cut in our expenses. as part of, as a planning factor for this. So again, I don't want to get hung up on this chart because it really was what we believed in June based on what we projected. And what I think is more important is showing you where we are now and then what our plan is moving forward. So this was not presented to the board per se. It's an interesting graphic that shows that over time, our FTE has been decreasing. It's just a reference frame. And Linda noted in her remarks earlier that as we go from division to division, we're going to spend more time talking about enrollment, talking about demographics, and setting that stage. This chart really just tees up the assumptions or the variables that are part of where we are now in our budget that was approved by the board. And so the reason I put this together for the board is that if you look at these different variables or categories, state funding, tuition, remissions, labor, other personnel expenses, enrollment, supplies and services, these really drive the numbers ultimately in the budget that we present. And so in the current year that's been approved, this documents the basis of that number. And again, those assumptions, those variables really matter because they drive the number. So in this case, we have a real number for what we're getting from the state, so that's loaded. We got approval for a 10% tuition rate increase last year from the HEC, and so that's laid in to the tuition revenue dollars. And what I'm going to show you next is our assumptions in the future years. So with regard to remissions, or what we call rate or aid, the current number, which is 3.6 million, is based on what the experts in financial aid tell us we need to support our students. Labor, these numbers are all based on negotiated rates that we have through the 2 collective bargaining agreements that we have. OPE, these are based on what we know with PERS and PEB. There's a lot we don't know about the future. We know the cost is escalating and that we don't like it, but that's all we know. We know that now at this point, collectively, I think enrollment was down 3.3%. We monitor this week by week. So this is a couple weeks old. Supplies and services, the footnote here is that we reduced the number in the budget that was approved because we had some costs that escalated last year that are not normal. Specifically, natural gas. You might remember a pipeline that blew up in Canada, jacked our natural gas prices way up. We probably burned through an extra $250,000 in natural gas. We burned an extra $150,000 in electric costs that are not normal, and so we backed those costs out as we worked to build the budget. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of sense for those variables. This shows you the changes in the future years, just as a planning factor. And I'm not going to go through each one of these. I just wanted to document for the board what the basis of those assumptions was in this. So this is what the board approved. Again, a lot of numbers, and I just want to hit a couple of the high notes. So this is the number that we expect to get as an allocation from the state. That's a hard number. The same with this ETIC number. Let's see, that drives the total state funding, which is here. This shows our expectation for tuition and fee revenues. Here's rate or aid at 3.6 million. And then, so this shows you that we expect a net of 66 million in revenue this year. All of these labor costs, which are shown here, tie to an expected total expenditure at 64 million. The net transfers I want to talk just briefly about, in that we've been transferring. So in these previous 2 years, we were upwards of about 2.8, 2.9 million in transfers. Last year, we bought that down by $1 million by transferring some money out of a plant fund that we had because we wanted to create a shock absorber for the potential for an infrastructure emergency or anything else. So the net effect was right here that ultimately we closed the year at 8.6%. Now we would love this number to be north of 10, but the fact of the matter is we were down about 3.3 million in revenue last year, so we were clawing back anything that we could claw back. So here's what I want to talk a little more about, and this is the 2.38 million in cost reductions that we have laid into the budget that the board approved. And the next couple of charts just show how we're going to get there. Okay? A lot of numbers, just drink them up. I know Kimball's like loving every minute of this. Yes,
Quick,
Kimball.
I just want to make sure, I think I know, but the bottom percent, those are fund balance, basically what we commonly call a fund balance.
So, yeah, so this number here, 5.28 million, would be the projected ending fund balance for this year. So this is the current year of execution. I apologize, I should have teed this chart up a little better. The gray columns are the previous years. Those are actual numbers. The green column is the budget that the board approved. The yellow columns represent the future year forecast. So I apologize for not teeing that up better.
And the
So-
board has been very clear about not falling below 8% as a percentage of operating revenues. And as Greg said, that's really lower than we'd like to be, over 10% at least, because national standard is like 40%.
Yes, and so having shown you a lot of numbers.
Greg, one question.
Yes.
Last year's tuition increase ended up to be 10%.
Correct.
What about the year before?
4.22. And the year before, 9. Yeah, thanks for asking. Okay, so how are we going to get there? So what we decided to do was to assign targets to each of the vice presidents and to let them do the hard work of determining how it was they could get these numbers to happen. I want to refer you back briefly to the email that Linda sent out a couple of weeks back that identified 3 priorities. So these targets are in keeping with the 3 priorities, which were maintaining academic excellence, number 1. Number 2, supporting student success. Number 3, achieving and maintaining operating efficiencies and effectiveness. So those 3 priorities were the driver, wherein the president's looking to get about 90K out of her budget. Sue's looking at 870. I'm looking at 1.3 mil, which includes general institution funds. Neil's looking at 200K. Janet's looking at 10K. And then that nets to the 2.4 million. So that's basically the near term. So that's the current year plan for how we're going to attack this. And please.
So we finish this.
I am.
Okay. So that's for this year, and I noticed on the projected, there's keeps saying like 3 million something savings. So this is what we're going to cut from this year's budget. We still have to figure out how to cut another 3 million something next year.
It'll be, and so yes, and some of these savings will be one-time savings, and some will be recurring savings. So if it's a recurring cut that we can carry in, then that's.
But it's not a cumulative 5 million over 2 years.
Right.
It's, you take the 2.4 this year, and then next year you have to get to a total of 3 point something, but that can absorb some of the stuff from this year.
Exactly. Yeah, thanks for asking. That's a great question.
And I just want to be clear here, when we started, we looked at, okay, we're down 4%, we take a 4% cut across the board. The number for the provost would have been much bigger at that, because the academic affairs is 50%, slightly more of the overall budget. We didn't think that was in keeping with the principle of maintaining academic excellence, right? So we looked at it in other ways, and that's how we ended up assigning the values. And Greg has a lot of hard work to do to take a big chunk of this out of his area of the operations. Everybody understand that?
And we did the team did a deep dive on vacancies, what do we currently have vacant, what do we project we can not fill later. That looked to track to about 800,000 of the 2.4. So there's a lot of little things that we're going to do to get to the total, and we have a lot of hard work on it. But so this is near term.
Campbell has a question.
Well, yeah, it's just sort of I mean, I think that really is an important point, but it's something that's kind of insider baseball. People aren't used to looking at the budget. And I was wondering if just for communication purposes, you could have another column which would say literally what % of the budget is that sector, because I've seen budget cuts too many times here. I really do appreciate that the university is making the decision to disproportionately lessen the impact on academic affairs, but that wouldn't be obvious to most people. And if we had the percentage of the budget up there, then people would say, oh, okay, you can do fractions like 870 is less than half of whatever, whereas academic affairs is half. That kind of stuff. Just a suggestion for communication.
Yeah, thank you.
I guess when creating these forecasts, do you have a margin of error, or sort of this is one number? Is there sort of a worst case scenario and this number that we're looking at?
There are absolutely worst case scenarios. For example, I hate to even go there, but I'm going to, since you asked. The worst case scenario on state appropriations is that we have a recession, or that we lose favor with legislators, and we get less fun, we get a flat budget, or they cut the budget. So that's a terrible scenario. Could it happen? Yes, and we're going to work hard. Linda and Jean did a great job last year in working very actively with the legislature to garner the support that we got. I skipped over an interesting side note, which is we got an additional $2.5 million in the sports lottery to cover this current biennia, and that's going to help reduce this transfer out of education general fund back to athletics. So we get little wins, so that was great that we got that extra funding for sports lottery. But there's a very pessimistic outlook on the state funding in the future years. Similarly, the demographic outlook is not kind. It's on a downward slope, and the pessimistic scenario would be that enrollments continue to decline, and then revenues continue to decline.
It does seem like some of those numbers seem relatively stable. So
yeah. So I skipped over this detail. These are fairly so if I was king for a day, we will never go back to the heck above 5% on tuition. That would be nice.
And that's what I said 2 years ago when we went for 9%, and then I was back this last spring, going back again because the numbers are what the numbers are.
So we model this at 5% in the future years. That could be more pessimistic, especially if we had other negative indicators. COLA increases. Yeah. So these assumptions for the future years are fairly realistic, and they're consistent with how we model the future.
I guess I don't want to say pessimistic, but maybe careful. Do we have an idea of what?
So Ellen, part of what you're not seeing is that pro forma is a live tool. So we can play with all of these numbers at any point and see, well, if this happens, what happens? If that happens, we can change any category, and so we can model all of that stuff, and we do. And we do it for the Tuition Advisory Council when Sue and your colleagues who are on that and the students are sitting there thinking about what tuition rate. They play with all of this to see, well, if we raise tuition 3.6%, what does it do to our budget? So we try to model optimistic. Last year we had an optimistic, a realistic, and a pessimistic that we worked with. Would you, Greg, just highlight the PERS line there and show how that's increased just from last year? You see that was 7 million and now it's 9 million? I mean, those are things we have no control over.
That's that whole budget right there. The whole difference.
But it is a bit sad that if you just look at OPE, if you just look, the state funding doesn't even account for these increases. I mean, it accounts for 87% of that.
You can see now, I think at the last meeting, maybe I said the state's, you can be cynical and say the state's paying us to provide health care and retirement to our employees, not to teach students. Because it's about equal there of what we're spending on those benefits to what we get from the state.
So the longer game, the longer term strategy starts with establishing a presidential task force. We've been developing this over the last couple of weeks. Linda, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I didn't bring a document, we haven't finalized it yet, I'll probably talk about it at the State of the University. But the idea, there's been a budget committee that's in the Faculty Senate bylaws and Constitution, but it hasn't been really functioning. I hate to say this, but I didn't even know it was there until Sue told me it was there. Because the first thing you do when you're hired as a president is not go read all of the bylaws and memorize them. You just don't have time to do that. Anyway, Greg and I both really want to have involvement in this process. So, but it's beyond developing budget, and that committee was really just set up to help, develop next year's budget. So what I'm looking for is a more robust task force that will build on the basic structure that was in our bylaws around that committee, but make it bigger, kind of like we did with strategic planning when we built on the university planning board and then we added people to it to be more inclusive of the campus. And really think about what subgroups then do we need to help us figure this out, because it's going to look at a variety of things. Enrollment obviously is a big one. Cost containment is one, and business processes and cost containment. But a really big one that I want to talk with the faculty about is faculty taking responsibility for the viability and sustainability of our portfolio of academic programs. Okay? And what I mean by that is, you're the ones who should be deciding what academic programs we offer, which we need to quit offering, which ones we need to add, right? What often happens is that faculty develop new programs. They come through the curriculum committee and the Senate, and at some point the institution has a crisis and the administration figures out, oh my God, how are we going to reduce our costs? And there's what this university did a few years ago, a program prioritization process, and some programs go away, all right? And then everybody tries to forget about the recent unpleasantness and go about their business until the next crisis, right? And then you go through something like that again. I just don't think that's a very good way to do it. I don't think it's a very reasonable, rational, sensible way to do it. And the market, the way higher ed these days, with the rapidity of change and the challenges are in front of us, we can't do that. And so instead of us doing this and coming in and telling you, well, we're going to have to cut this, this, and that, right? I'd much rather get faculty involved in, a representative group of faculty involved in looking at the markets that we're trying to serve, looking at intellectual trends and development. It's not all about markets, it's about staying abreast of what the learners coming towards us want, what they need for employment, right? So all of those things, but working together with you then to say, well, given all of this information, we need to morph here, we need to add this, we need to take away that. And I want to be clear that as I say that, I know what I'm asking, and I know how hard this work will be. Who's better to do it than the faculty? It's your areas of expertise. And what I hope is that we can do this in a very informed, collegial way that isn't about getting rid of faculty, okay? It's not about reducing the numbers of faculty. It's about helping people get into places where there's more student demand, where the intellectual trends are going, where the employment trends are going. So that's all stuff that we have to work out. And I have a fuller, and we'll have a more written description of this. I want faculty to push back on it, right? I want you to say, oh, well, yes over here, but no, this won't work. We need to come up with a process for doing this that we can all agree on and we can all live with, and it will be ongoing forever, right? There is not going to be a time, unless I'm just really delusional, I don't think there's a time when universities can say, okay, curriculum's set now, we don't have to think about this for 10 years. It's got to be almost a constant process of change. But it's something that we will work on together. So that's what a big piece of this. It's just one piece. There's like, I don't remember, maybe 4 or 5 groups that in my mind I see working to feed in and inform this presidential task force on financial sustainability. So there'll be members on the task force, and then like with strategic planning, we'll form these subgroups, and the people will get more people involved through those subgroups. And yes, I have asked Sue, can we look at workload? We know that for some people, this will be a big workload issue. And so we will invest in that and compensate people for the work that we need done around us. That was a whole lot of
That was good.
Anybody have questions about that? Does it make sense what I'll lay it out in writing so you can really look at it. But I really think if we can do this together, it's probably it's one of the most important things that we need to do to keep this university going.
We are a little over 10 minutes over schedule.
And these are the last 2 things that we're going to be more efficient and effective, and we're studying things like Western Oregon University's Golden Handshake. You know, how do we offer early retirement, more things like that. And that's all I have pending other questions.
Any burning questions that have to be answered in the room today?
I have a quick, this is a quick yes, no. This is a quick yes, no. So all of the universities get 837 million, SOU gets 21 million?
Yes.
We get 21 million out of 837 million in the state.
Yes.
But
Excellent.
Funding well.
Yeah. Seems disproportionate.
All right, thank you very much, Greg. Appreciate your time.
Sometimes it feels like they're battling beating our heads against the doors of these legislators' offices. Please give us these crumbs, please. Because but we have to have it. It's 22 million we need.
All right. Sorry to transition like this, but our next item is for Brett Anderson on the Pathway Development Committee. The gist is Brett needs more people on the committee, right?
The gist is additions, not subtractions.
Two more people.
Yeah, I can be quick.
Yep.
Yeah, the Faculty Development Committee, I think, is in need of a little bit of a reboot or reinvestment. There's been some lingering changes that have accumulated, or the need for changes that have kind of accumulated, waiting for the right group of people to come together to take on some of those. So we met this morning. We have a really great committee this year, which I'm really enthused about. Several in the room, but so anyway, when the original task, I believe, or charge for the committee was put forth from Senate, my understanding is that the number of carpenter applications is much less, and it's been just trending upwards in numbers. We sifted through 24.5 this morning, this last week of the Carpenter 2 grants, and that was pleasant because normally it's more like 30 to 35, especially in the spring when we did that one. And so the numbers of applications have kind of been creeping up over the years. As well, I think when the committee was charged, the Distinguished Teaching Award didn't exist yet, the Distinguished Service Award didn't exist yet, and now we're being bestowed the Distinguished Scholarship Award, which I can date you on that too. So there's been some changes that have been in the queue and just waiting for the right crew, and I think we've got the right crew right now. So the last piece of this is that given some of the work from the faculty, the Faculty Awards Task Force that happened this summer, the report that you all have seen, I know, and some momentum with the Center for Advancement Teaching and Learning, the committee is a little bit under-resourced to kind of embrace some of those recommendations and those new momentums. So anyway, I put in the shared drive some light edits to the bylaws. There's actually 3, only 2 of them made it into that first draft. I caught another one this morning. And so this is bylaws 1.324. For under A, the charge, the last bullet point, it says support advises Center for Instructional Support. That has a new name, and so that's going to be this. I would propose to change that to support advises Center for the Advancement of Teaching and Learning. That change also shows up in C. I had missed that in the document that I had marked up on the drive. So that one's pretty agnostic and follows the lead of the other one. The substantive changes under 4B, membership, and here I request we change it to the Faculty Senate appoints 8 faculty members. So I'd like 2 more, and that'll allow us to do some subcommittee work that's maybe more of a grant side and a reward side to help alleviate some of the, help open the door for us to say yes to more requests that are being placed on the committee.
And Brent, am I correct that if that this is pretty urgent, you would like this change to take place as soon as possible?
Would love for this change to take place.
So I would like to ask, would anyone have would like to make a motion on suspending the 2-week rule?
Yes, I will make the motion to suspend the 2-week rule.
Do we have a second? Mark Snyder seconds. Any discussion on the 2-week rule?
Well, there are bylaws, revisions deadlines we can't monkey with. So we have to send this out to the faculty, give them 7 days. So we can.
We can't suspend.
Sorry.
Oh, you're right. You're right. I forgot.
Way to go, Brian.
You seconded, thank you for following.
All right, so we cannot do anything about this today, but if you could get me the corrected document that has the change of that the C bullet, we'll make sure it gets out of it.
But, I mean, we could do something different. We could authorize the 2 additional people for right now to get on the committee. Just in the Senate and say we need that, even if it isn't in the bylaws. We just can't change the bylaws like that.
Brian, would you like any motion?
I would like to make a motion to what Kimball said. To changing from 6 to 8 and changing the
To add 2
bylaws.
people right now.
Second?
I'll second. That's
Okay.
a great motion.
Any further discussion?
I'm gonna follow
This is not about that, but there's nothing in the bylaws about representation. This is one of the, I mean, a lot of the committees say like it should be relatively equal. And like last year, there were like 4 out of 6 people that were all in the same division, which seemed
It's a little more about, it was probably a little social science heavy last year. That's less so the case now.
right. But 4 out of 6 all from one division seems unbalanced.
Yeah, I don't think, I have to look to see where everybody's from, but
Yeah, that was last year. This year, it's not as unbalanced, but you know, I wonder if we should put something in the bylaws about it being relatively balanced. I know it's not always possible,
So,
but.
to counter my reaction is that in the past, part of the reason that I would like to have 8 instead of 6 is in the past, it's 100% participation for all the rounds of the grant applications and the other things, we had that bar hadn't been achieved every time. And so if there were 8 and there were some requirements that all the divisions were represented, I'd be worried about some of the burden on the smaller divisions, for one. But 2, I'd be worried about a vacant seat on the committee because of that constraint, taking the wind out of the sails of that original proposal. But I understand what you're saying, I'm sensitive to it.
What's the time commitment?
What's the time commitment for the committee work? It's evolving. And in some ways, the time commitment will, for the entire committee, will increase if we add more. But per person, I think it will go down. Because this way we can help with the Center for Advancement Teaching and Learning. Right now, we spend, I'm guessing most of the committee spent at least 3/4 of a day this weekend doing the Carpenter 2 reward, so you'll see me in 2 weeks to get those approved. We're going to work on the scholars. We're meeting every 2 weeks right now. We're going to do a draft of the Distinguished Scholarship Award. Hopefully have that for you on the December 2nd meeting, or whenever that is, 4 weeks from now.
Thank you, by the way, that's awesome.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll have that out and people eligible for it this year. That's the goal. We'll see if we hit that mark or not. And then it really picks up. This is our lighter term, and then it really picks up in the winter and the spring. We have Carpenter 2 again, Carpenter 1, Professional Development Grants, Distinguished Teaching Award is chaired by this committee. Distinguished Service is selected by the committee. Now the Distinguished Scholarship is going to be selected from the committee. So it's winter and spring we're way busy. So right now is the time to kind of think about our procedures.
So we have 4 minutes, any further discussion?
I just say, if we're gonna do these bylaws right, shouldn't we add a bullet point recognizing all this work with the awards? I mean, that's a brand new thing that's really increased your workload, and it's something we all highly value.
Yeah, in there.
Shouldn't we just add a bullet that says, makes recommendations on faculty awards or something generic, so we don't have to change it every time a word changes, but is that not there now? I don't think it is.
I mean, the charge is actually quite broadly written. Study and recommend means to evaluate and improve the instructional program and general scholarship of the faculty. My joke is it always sounds like the same responsibilities as the entire provost office.
So you think that
By
captures it well enough?
Promote research activities, establish criteria and review faculty applications for faculty development monies, recommend disbursement of faculty development monies such as Carpenter grants, instructional development funds and research funds, support and advise the Center for Advancement of Teaching and Learning. So it seems to fall underneath that more broad umbrella, but I'm happy to kind of craft.
I don't want to take any more time talking about it. I decided to throw it out there. It's fine.
All those in favor of a temporary, or what's that?
Increasing
the committee by 2 pending bylaws change? All those opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the motion passes. So you get your more people.
Procedurally, is that something that Paul Condon?
Yeah. Yes, and Paul's not here today, so you can like email him.
I got it. Enrique and I are on committee.
So it's just any 2, because we're not.
Yeah. And then give me the updated one, and I'll send it out to all faculty so that we can get a permanent change to that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Daniel Kelly, you have 1 minute. You asked for 10. Do you want to do it now, or do you want to come back in 2 weeks and get more time?
I believe I could do it. That's
All right.
all right. So this first thing I'm going to hand out, I'd like to ask that each of you take one and then pass it on. So my name is Daniel Kelly. I'm a student worker with ECOS, Student Sustainability Center, just down the hall there. My specific position is to be the transportation options coordinator for the university and look for ways that we can meet the commuting demands that the students, faculty, and staff experience on this campus. One of the ways that I'm here today to talk to you about that is through Get There Oregon, which is a new tool developed by the Oregon Department of Transportation to increase ride sharing and carpooling activities throughout the state. We all know that transportation is a major issue for everyone in their life. Everyone has to commute somewhere, and usually for people who are working or attending SU classes, they have to get to SU. And as a result, we are currently working on developing a new SU network to increase carpooling trips to the university. I personally have talked to a number of students who are coming from long distances to get to the university, some of them even coming from Wairika. So I'm coming to you today as the Faculty Senate to not only encourage you within your divisions and within your building areas to encourage carpooling, make a carpooling trip today on this website, but also present it in your classrooms as a form of transportation. I know personally that only about 25% of students currently are living in the residence halls down the street. That means 75% of our students are coming from somewhere outside of campus area, even if it's just from the general Ashland area, or much likely much farther beyond that. So I'm here today to just encourage you to check out Get There Oregon. If you sign up with your SU email address, you'll automatically be enrolled in the SU network and be able to see any carpooling trips from there. Please use it, please encourage it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other announcements or new business before we adjourn?
It could be for any kind of.
Just really quick for the task force that is working on the general education, we are having students do a survey and we're hoping to just come through like a really quick class wrap into the faculty's classes about the survey, and they're not gonna have to take it in class, we're hopefully gonna have handouts with a QR code for them to then take it later. But that should be sent out to you in about a week, so if you get the email asking for one of our student representatives to come to your class, it would only take a few minutes, and it would be very appreciative if you responded and allowed us to come into your class. That's all.
APSU is looking for board nominations. We need a president-elect, a recorder, and 2 at-large. So far, since my email went out, I have had 0 interest. So please encourage people to put forth their name, again, as president-elect, which is the only 3-year term, 2 at-large members, and the recorder.
Long night against procrastination is Wednesday. Encourage your students to come. Library's open.
Thought Prakash was going to be here to talk about the campus theme, but there is a poster he sent me to put in the drive. So take a look at that and see the event.
Guanajuato Nights fundraising dinner, I think, is this Saturday?
This
Saturday.
Auction food.
Hedda Gobler opens, the apartment opens on Thursday, Angels America Part 2, Costa Rica opens next Tuesday, or Thursday. They both run 2 p.m.
Anything else? Going once? Done twice? Adjourned.
Thank you, Andrew.
Eat the cookies or I'm sharing your brain.
Yay.